Oh, hi again. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to you all. We will be starting our session, although the participants are still need some time to join. But just to not waste more of your time, I will be starting. My name is Yaman Sarraj. I'm the manager of the Syria Response Innovation Lab, and we are delighted to have you with us today. We will be exploring today a concept that is becoming increasingly vital in the humanitarian space, the ecosystem. Now the work is ecosystem is being used everywhere, in tech, in business, and even in casual conversation. But what does it actually mean in the humanitarian context? So today we are going to unpack that and trying to explore the concept of ecosystem. We will be exploring how ecosystem thinking can help us driving innovation, fostering collaboration, and designing more adaptive responses. This webinar is organized by the Syria Response Innovation Lab, which is an initiative supported by World Vision Syria Response. Our lab is focused on creating a platform where bold, practical, and collaborative innovation becomes essential to the humanitarian work. Our speakers for today are Max Weil, the director of the Global Response Innovation Lab, who will be guiding us through ecosystem concepts and tools. Ruba Hijazi, my colleague and the MENA Response Innovation Lab, she will share reflections on how this thinking applies across the region. And last but not least, we are thrilled to be joined by Grace Nakibala, the manager of the Uganda Response Innovation Lab, who will walk us through a compelling case study from Uganda and how it works in building ecosystem in Uganda. And with that, I'm handing over to my colleague, Ruba. Over to you, Ruba. You are mute, I guess.
Thank you so much, Yaman. And I'm glad to be with you again, actually, with the ecosystem of Syria Response Innovation Lab. So today, as Yaman mentioned, we will be talking about what is an ecosystem. We'll try to understand together what ecosystem is in the humanitarian innovation. And I would like to start us off with a quote that really frames how we think about ecosystems in this session. Um, the author of Thinking in Systems book said, we can't impose our will on a system. We can listen to what the system tells us and discover how its properties and our values can work together to bring forth something much better than what we could ever be produced what could ever be produced by our will alone. And this is a powerful reminder that ecosystems, whether in nature, in communities, in humanitarian work, or in humanitarian innovation, are complex and alive. And our role is not to control them, but to work with them. And that exactly the mindset we will explore today. How to listen to the system, understand its components, and find ways to collaborate with it in a meaningful and sustainable way. So today we will be introducing the word ecosystem, and we will be talking what an ecosystem is and why it matters across different fields. We will discuss the key ecosystem components, the actors, the relationships, and the enabling conditions for ecosystems. We will discover tools and methods for mapping and analyzing ecosystem, and we'll gain inspiration from real-world experiences, including our ecosystem in Uganda. The session will be for 90 minutes, and we will be covering as I said, the definition of ecosystem, the components, and REL as an ecosystem better. So before we start, we'd like to know from you, what is the word ecosystem for you? What comes to mind when you hear the term ecosystem? I will ask you all to scan the QR code, and maybe Yaman will send you in the chat a link to Menti. If you can share with us your thoughts. What ecosystem means to you? What is the word for you? So focused, natural, diversity, people working on the sorry, I can't see this word. Many people working on the what? Maybe on innovation. I just want to make sure that everyone can access Menti. If not, you can diversity, yep, opportunity, nice, full set of activities. Yeah, collaboration. I was waiting for this word. Okay. Network. This word in the chat. If anyone can't access Menti, you can also use the chat to share your thoughts. Natural, nice. Okay. Knowledge. Yeah, relationship between entities. Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of these thoughts. Actually, the word ecosystem come to us from the nature. One of you mentioned nature, and yes, it's come from the nature, specifically from the forest. In the forest, the trees, the plants, the animals, insects, waters are living together, and they depend on each other. And even the soil, the air, and all of the components of the forest, they live together. And no single element survive alone. The trees provide oxygen and shelter, fungi help decompose waste, and animals spread seeds. And if one part is harmed, that will affect the whole system and the other components in the forest. So the same will go with the growth. If one part trigger growth, that will also affect the other components in the forest. So the rain will support plants, and the plants will support the animals who eats plants, and it's like a cycle. And the same uh, for other fields. And we can see that the ecosystem concept in other fields, like in business, in education, in technology, and in the humanitarian innovation work. In other fields, like the forest, we are a system, like we are working in systems or ecosystems. We can see the government, the NGOs, the private sector, the communities, the funders, the innovators affecting our work. And just like the forest, focusing on a single actor or a problem in isolation can cause us to miss opportunities, and also to miss collaboration and the ripple effect that enables scaling of our success and, in our case, our innovations. So the ecosystem thinking means to understand how everything is connected. The stakeholders, the policies, the power dynamics, the capacity, and the feedback loops. So now maybe you should take a moment to think about your ecosystem. What are the different organisms in your ecosystem, the physical environment, and the specific area? In this case, maybe we are talking about Syria in specific. So you can start thinking of the organizations that shape the ecosystem, the government, maybe the different organizations, and also yeah, in the physical environment, as we said, it's Syria, and now in the beginning the lab was focusing on northwest Syria, but now I think and all of the organizations are now focusing on whole Syria. Um, so you start to think about the ecosystem around your work. And one of the examples that we can show here around specifically around innovation ecosystem is the ecosystem in Silicon Valley. It's a specific location with different organizations working in this ecosystem and supporting each other in a way or another uh, to um, to generate growth. The context is similar. They are working around technology, and as we said, it's in a one geographical location. So now I will move to Max, who will be talking about ecosystems and innovation.
Thank you, Ruba, and hello, everyone. Now, to build on what you were saying, Ruba, it's clear that innovation doesn't work very well if it's happening only inside one organization. And I think for a long time in the humanitarian system, it's a little bit what you saw. You saw a very closed, environment where you had maybe one donor that was giving money to a UN agency or an international NGO that had their usual implementer partner on the ground, and you wouldn't have a lot of conversations outside of that. And it makes innovation quite difficult if you're not bringing in new perspectives, if you're working only within the same organization, same groups of people. You're missing out, I think, on a lot of opportunity. So the idea is, and what Response Innovation Lab has been trying to do, is to try to open some doors, build some bridges, and make people think in the humanitarian space that they are actually part of a very diverse, very dynamic environment with a lot of new ideas, a lot of additional expertise that can work for them, and especially that can work for the people that they're serving, that can lead to better products. So next, and services. Next slide, please. So social innovation in general has to be collaborative because it's rarely an internal process. You're generally not innovating for the internal operations of your organization. You really want to innovate for people, right? From people that live in communities that are affected by conflict, by climate change, by poverty, disaster, any of these things. And so it has to be collaborative in nature, because it's, as I always say, you can't innovating for people doesn't work. You have to innovate with people so that you know what they want, what they're willing to adopt, and what is actually in their interest. So there needs to be, social innovation has to be a collaborative process in order to function, and not just between the sort of implementers and the beneficiaries, but you also have a lot of other roles that come into it, such as government oversight, monitoring and evaluation, funding, and so on. So it really does take a lot of people to work. Next slide. So supply and demand is very important. And I think it's something, again, we in the nonprofit world and the humanitarian sector don't always talk about. For instance, when we talk about demand, generally we talk about need. And need is very important. You need to know, what do communities need? Do they have enough water? Are the schools, open? Do they need a particular kind of intervention? That's normal. That's what humanitarians do, is respond to need. But when you look at innovation, and if you're trying to introduce something new that's going to last, you need to go beyond that. It has to be really about demand. Is there demand for what you're proposing? Meaning, is there a need? But also, are there resources to pay for this new solution? Even if it's more cost effective, there still needs to be an investment. And then are people willing to change, which is often overlooked. Sometimes you have the money, you have the need, but people don't really like the way things are working now, and they don't feel like they're not comfortable maybe moving to a digital system, or they don't feel ready to completely alter the way they work. Same thing for supply. Many times we've seen at Response Innovation Lab around the world, people spending a lot of time and a lot of resources to develop a solution that already exists, because they don't look for it. They don't look to see, has somebody else solved that problem? Has somebody else developed a solution in the same, to address the same challenges we're addressing? And that ends up being, a lot of waste. And if you realize after a year or two that there is a solution that's actually already in the market, that's working, and that people are adopting, it can make it much harder then for you to succeed. Unless you are ready to compete with that solution. Next slide. So it's also really critical to understand in which ecosystem are we functioning, are we operating, because that helps us understand what scale we're operating in. So if as an innovator, if you want to solve a global solution, you're going to need to be connected to the global ecosystem, because ultimately, you'll need to find sources of funding that are multi-country. You'll need to convince international organizations to partner with you or to support you. But if your aim is to work within your community, for example, just within a particular municipality, then that can be your ecosystem. Then you really need to look at who's funding, where are the sources of funding for that municipality, who are the different key stakeholders, who do you need to have as champions, as supporters, as partners within that community. But it's really important to understand in which ecosystem are you working in from the early stage. Otherwise, again, you may end up if you're working at the global level, for instance, and you don't look at what is happening in other countries, you may end up, developing a solution that's already, mainstream, that's already exists elsewhere. So I would say, yeah, it's knowing in which ecosystem you operate is really critical. Next, please. And so when we say that social innovation is always collaborative, it's also because very few organizations, or maybe no organization, has all the resources you need to be truly innovative. So if you are a nonprofit organization, you have technical expertise. You may have some funding. You may have the staff on hand and the time to do it, but you may not really have, the kind of sophisticated software or hardware you're going to need to make it work. Maybe you don't have the ability to own intellectual property in the way that a social entrepreneur would. Perhaps you also need additional presence, and access to markets, to communities. So this is really important for you. Again, these are things that should and probably exist in your ecosystem, that you're going to likely need to connect with, and to see who can provide this for you, who can partner with you to develop, the full, the innovation or the solution in its entirety. Because again, if you're developing something that's going to require long-term, access to a particular kind of product for the long time, like a tool or a spare part, and that's not available in your ecosystem, that's going to be a big problem for you down the road. So this is, and I think also in more and more, in addition to the technical expertise, the private sector, you're seeing more and more actors that specialize in supporting innovation, whether they're innovation accelerators, incubators, design hubs, and these can play a really critical role in helping people with ideas and with challenges to find and incubate and develop these solutions, and find funding as well. Next. So we take two approaches. I think we kind of focus on two really important methodologies at Response Innovation Lab that engage the ecosystem and make us work with others. One is something we call challenge mapping, which is basically a way to take a systems approach to looking at a problem, because problems often aren't very simple, right? The problem may be simple, but it's part of a bigger picture. And so understanding how does that challenge, who does it impact, who is connected to it, how does it affect their users, how does it affect people who are responsible for certain services, government and so on, but really understanding who's connected to that problem, and who would therefore could be a supporter in solving the problem, and also who has the keys to the solution sometimes. That's an approach we take during what we call convener workshops, and I know Yaman has run already a couple of those in Syria so far. And then secondly, and these obviously have to be very collaborative, because you want to hear from many different points of view about what the problem is and who's involved, how does it affect people, and so on. The second methodology is human-centered design, human-centered solutions, which means that you have to at every stage of the process, you have to think not just theoretically, not just about the systems, but about the actual people in the system. Because at the end of the day, if your solution, even if your solution is an internal, a new accounting software, or if it's a tool that you're providing farmers, at some point it's about a human person that's going to be interacting with your solution. So if you're developing an accounting software, but it's only available in English, then you're hoping to see community organizations in remote Syria use it, you might have a problem, because it's quite possible that the users won't be able to read it. Same thing if you develop a farming tool to help farmers plow their field better. If it's too heavy for women to use, you might be excluding a lot of people. So these two things together, they serve the purpose of constantly engaging with other individuals and organizations within that ecosystem, so that you end up developing solutions that really work and that people want to use. So I think, as in sort of wrapping this, this is really, I think somebody mentioned the word network, and I saw the word collaboration in the poll, and I think those are both really critical, because it is a network and we're all connected. Sometimes we don't think of it that way, but when you analyze it, you realize just how many connections exist around challenges like climate adaptation, or food production, or gender-based violence. These are societal problems that involve many, many parts of society and many different types of organizations. And so the more ideas, the more support you can gather, the more the more prepared your solution might be for success. So it's also really important to not just look at the organization that's going to be implementing the solution and the direct users, but everything in between. So obviously, if you have a great solution that is not within the legal framework of the country, you're not going to be able to scale, because the government will say no, like we don't allow this kind of data sharing, for instance, or we don't allow the use of drones in our airspace. And if nobody wants to fund it as well, if you don't see, if you talk to investors or donors and they say, no, we're really not interested in this particular problem, that can prevent you from investing too much of your time and resources, and maybe finding ways of another kind of solution that might actually receive more funding, be more acceptable to the regulators, and so on. And ultimately, it's about finding support, right? It's about seeing who in this space can help you design, develop, fund, sustain your solution in the long run. I think I'm going to, and I have this also in this model of the innovation ecosystem components. And I think we talked about the actors, and I think that's the first step usually. And I think Grace will be demonstrating, many of the different types of actors you might find in the ecosystem. But it's also not just beyond the actors, it's also about the relationship. How do they connect with each other? And knowing, who's already collaborating, who is responsible for policy, who is an influencer, who is feeling excluded. These relationships is something we actually explore when we do the challenge mapping, and they're really important because many times it's when these relationships don't work that there's room for innovation to create relationships that work better and that serve people better. And same thing about enabling conditions. That's incredibly important to know. Are the conditions there? As can you operate a solution in the current enabling conditions, or do you need to also advocate for change? So, for instance, again, like as the use of drones, if drones are prohibited in Syria, for instance, by the government, you might need to actually ask for special permission or to change, maybe ask to lobby for a change in those policies if you can demonstrate added value. And finally, and I think this is very important, in the sustainability of innovation, is to look at value flows and how do you, what is going to be the value of your innovation and who's going to see that value. And it doesn't always have to be customers or end users. It can often be implementers of humanitarian programming. So it can be the government, it could be the funders themselves. If you're, for instance, are able to find a solution that saves costs, but doesn't change anything for the direct users, that's still a very valuable innovation. So understanding these value flows and who in the ecosystem is going to see that value is very important. And and I'll hand it over to Ruba to talk about a real example.
Yeah, thank you, Max. So yes, I will be talking about Uber as an example because Uber ecosystem refers to this interconnected system of people, platforms, technology, and partners and services that enable Uber to function and grow. Like any ecosystem, it thrives on interaction, mutual value exchange, and constant evolution. So if you know Uber model, you know that they have their the drivers, the riders, and also rental partners. Their ecosystem, the ecosystem partnership deliver value across the board, not just for Uber, but also for like everyone in the ecosystem. So the rental companies and drivers and the riders get value out of this. And this is aligning with the broader mission to help people to go anywhere and get anything and earn on their own terms. And if we think of Uber as a living city, we will see that the riders are the citizens, the drivers are the transportation service, and the application is the city planner. Algorithms are the traffic control centers, and regulators are the local government. And we can think of it as this. It's an ecosystem that interacts with each other. The core actors, as we said, are the drivers, riders, and sometimes the restaurants and merchants when we talk about something like Uber Eat. And also there is the enabling technologies. So they are using the mobile application, they use the maps and the algorithms, the payment systems, then the matching algorithms and the navigation and maps. And in order to be able to have all of these technology, enabling technology, you need to partner with different actors in your ecosystem. We introduced Silicon Valley ecosystem in the beginning, and for Uber in this example, they need to collaborate, as an example, with Google to have an access for the maps and for the payment systems, the different payment systems, and sometimes different payment systems according to the country they are working in. So the enabling technologies is what drive value for Uber. Also, they need supportive stakeholders, the local government, the regulators. I remember here in Jordan, when Uber started, they suffered to convince the government to have specific regulations for them. But then, after having collaboration, now we have regulations for Uber and the other companies that working like them, the investors as well, and their different technology partners. Also, Uber was able to have different business extensions, like as we mentioned, Uber Eats, Uber for Business, and advanced technology groups. So they are providing different services now after like benefiting of the whole ecosystem they have. And they also have their own dynamics. The network effect, more drivers will attract more riders, and vice versa. The feedback loops, the rating and reviews that we see in the application improve the service quality, and the incentives and the promotions keep users engaged and competitive. So they have like different dynamics that help them in their ecosystem. So this is an example of how the ecosystem could be helpful for your innovation. We are not working in silos, so it's important to have different collaborations and to understanding of the ecosystem and the different actors in this system. Now I will show a video about the convener events or the challenge mapping, and I hope that some of you attended some of these challenge mapping exercises that we conducted in Northwest Syria and in Gaziantep. And it will show how the Response Innovation Lab can build the ecosystem. And after that, maybe Max will be talking more about the Response Innovation Lab as an ecosystem builder.
The humanitarian challenges we face are often unprecedented. From sudden disasters to protracted crises, our need to find solutions has never been greater. Response Innovation Lab lies at the heart of humanitarian innovation. We are a network of field-based labs that map and convene humanitarian actors, broker partnerships between challenge holders and innovators with our matchmaker service, generate evidence, and support and scale humanitarian innovation worldwide. So what does the convener do? A humanitarian challenge is like a puzzle. No single organization has all the pieces. Often, we don't know what the picture is or who else has pieces that fit. A convener helps us bring these pieces together. Let's think of a country. We'll call it Puzzleland, and it's been recently hit by a new pandemic. The needs are overwhelming. From personal protective equipment, soap and sanitizers, data management, to tracking and tracing new cases, to public health campaigns sensitizing populations in rural areas on the dangers the pandemic poses and mitigation strategies. There are organizations all over the country who have the capacity to help, but they don't know where to turn. Sade runs a local NGO that trains teachers. Anand has a startup company working with rural cooperatives producing textiles and soap. Dimitri works for an international NGO, and he is a whiz with funding and scaling up solutions. And Mina works for the Ministry of Health, managing supply chain and tracking new cases. They received an invitation from Response Innovation Lab to a convener workshop in the capital, Puzzleville. At the convener, health workers, NGOs, the UN, the government, academia, and private sector worked together to build a visual map that helps them better understand all the players in the ecosystem of the pandemic response. Here, Anand met with Mina. Together, they started working on designing and producing PPE for health workers. Anand also met Dimitri, and they are working on scaling up soap production for communities hit by the virus. Sade connected with an NGO that helps her create a new curriculum for teachers sensitizing rural communities on the virus and mitigation strategies. But Mina still feels there's a crucial piece missing. The country is vast, and as clusters of the disease emerge, she needs to send help to those communities quickly. If only she had fast and reliable data on new cases emerging. And Sade is not the only one. Many others feel there is a gap in mapping the disease outbreaks in rural areas. To better enable these actors, Response Innovation Lab has helped them create a challenge map. By using our principles of human-centered design and a systems approach to analyzing the public health landscape in Puzzleland, Mina and her peers have identified the lack of rapid diagnostics in rural areas as a key problem that innovation could solve. Now they have consensus on what the problem is. Mina can now take the challenge to the Response Innovation Lab Matchmaker service to receive help finding an affordable and reliable solution. Over time, as the pandemic response changes, Sade, Dimitri, Anand, and Mina can refer to the ecosystem map to connect with others and further respond and understand challenges as they arrive. Reach out to the Response Innovation Lab to learn how we can help you tackle.
Thanks, Ruba, for the video. Yeah, just to say a few words, because I think from the very beginning, we saw that when Response Innovation Lab was created, the initial sort of impulsion, the impulse, the reason we existed was after an earthquake in Nepal in 2015, our founder, her name was Jenny McCann, she was working in a humanitarian space, but she saw that at all these meetings where people were talking about the problems of reconstruction after the earthquake, it was all the people were from nonprofits, UN agencies, government. There was really no one from the tech sector in Nepal. There was no one from like the social entrepreneurship side or some academics and so on. And so the idea from the beginning was to create a space where these different actors could come and then could actually connect with each other. So Response Innovation Lab is not, we always say it's not really, we're not a lab in the sense that we create our own solutions. We're a broker, we connect people. And the kinds of actors, and I think, and Grace will go a bit more into this, but we basically see our humanitarian innovation ecosystem as being made up of a number of roles, organizations that play certain roles that can be complementary. So for instance, we have the implementers, the organizations that are actually delivering services, sometimes international organizations, UN agencies, but mostly local organizations, community-based organizations that actually deliver services. We have knowledge institutions who have, who've done research or hold data or organize trainings or have technical expertise that they can share to help understand problems and develop solutions and advocate for change. There's a whole private sector, which is obviously very broad category, but that can serve, that they have, private sector companies can help with procuring certain types of materials, services, logistics, themselves, or have innovations, have developed innovations through startups, through larger companies. And then you have support organizations. These are organizations that are designed to provide support to humanitarian innovators or social innovators. So again, innovation hubs, acceleration hubs, incubators, and so on. And then you have finance and government. Finance, anybody who's bringing in funding, whether it's grants, but it could also be investments, it could be impact funds, it could be a number of different ways to fund solutions. And then the government, which generally is an implementer, but also has an oversight role, right? They decide the strategy of the reconstruction, of the response. Sometimes they also are, they have their regulations about what you can and can't do in that country. So it's these types of, these are the elements we see in the ecosystem, because generally these are where the connections will happen. So you may have somebody with a great solution, but they're ready to scale. They just need funding, and so they need to find a finance actor. Sometimes you have an implementer that really wants to try something new. They may need help from the support organization, for instance, and maybe also connect with the private sector to create a partnership. So this is our approach. Is the idea is the more information we can share to everyone, the more likely we think people will be able to find each other and find ways to collaborate to make the innovations process stronger. So with that said, I'm going to stop and turn it over to Grace.
Uh,
joining you today, and I'll just speak into the Uganda ecosystem, also share two examples of the map we've done.
Sorry, Grace, I don't know if it's others as well, but it's sort of hard to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Better, yeah.
Okay.
there's a bit of
So
echo,
I'll
but
just
like
speaking to the Uganda ecosystem, and again to mention that as Response Innovation Lab, as we started our work in Uganda, it was really thinking about who's in the innovation space, what are they doing, what does it look like? And the map that you can see on the screen is really showing the different actors that are contributing to the ecosystem. And of course, that includes the startups themselves that are creating solutions, and these could be within the away from the humanitarian response, but we've seen that some of the solutions that are happening around Uganda can actually support the humanitarian response, but also that's a number of the innovation work happening is not aware of the humanitarian response. So what we do is we come in to bridge that gap to create the interaction between the responders, the NGOs, the startup themselves, the government agencies that are actually managing and leading a lot of approvals for you to implement within the humanitarian response. But also we have academia, and I know this must be the case with even your country, where academia, there's a lot of research happening around different topics. If I'm to speak about Uganda, if it comes to climate smart agriculture, a lot of work around best practices, testing, irrigation systems. So how do we bridge the conversations happening there with the implementers, but also the beneficiaries? And that's where having that ecosystem understanding and having conversations together becomes very core. If we also talk about the donors, where are they putting their funds? What do they even understand what the ecosystem looks like in Uganda? So bring them to the same room and having conversations and knowing what is being done by the different actors, then they're able to be part of the conversation and focus their funds, or even the people doing the different researches or innovation, that able to know who is supporting that work to be able to efficiently target their focus or conversations on how to move forward with the pilots, etc. Next slide. So allow me just share my screen at this point, and I'm going to share two maps that we have in Uganda that we have used a lot. Okay. Please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can, Grace.
Okay, so we mapped different actors in climate. We had a request that came through from Save the Children that hosts the lab here to really understand what's happening around climate smart agriculture, climate response, and disaster risk reduction in Uganda. And we went out to find out who is doing any work, what exactly are they doing. So this is the map, and just to note that it's not comprehensive. A number of it's a continuous process overall, but you can see that in this ecosystem we have private sector coming out very boldly, and often we think private sector, okay, before, I think now we've understood the private sector is very close to humanitarian response, but you can see private sector, government having a lot of work within Uganda in around climate. We also see civil societies, and then academia. We also see that there's a sector working group, but also regional bodies that are having this, that are doing work within climate. And so with this, we also see coordinating mechanism, the national, so breaking it all down. And so this map is like a one-stop center. If you want to even think about work within climate, you're able to know who is doing what and in what area. If you see civil societies, there are NGOs, NGO umbrella donors, non-profit organization, among others. But also, like I mentioned, this is information that we want to keep building, and the environment keeps changing with new people coming into that space and some exiting. So we have an auto submit entry. So someone, if you go on the website, you're able to submit your details, and then we are able to reach out to you to review and upload your data within the ecosystem. So how is this helping? So we've had, for example, recently, one of the areas the district government leadership wanted to understand who's doing what within their area. So they're able to come, and if they're looking for private sector, they're able to click on the bubble and then really look at if you're looking for companies, and you're able to know what they are doing, which focus area is it, energy, is it health, and a bit of wrap on what exactly they are doing in that space. And at the end of that day, you are also able to download that specific data that you need. Then you're able to engage through phone call, through email address, through just going to their website to get more information. So instead of imagine a scenario where you want to understand data around who is doing something around a piece of work that you're doing, a core topic, and you just have one place where you're able to get all this information. And that's one of the roles that the Response Innovation Lab is doing. But all the different data that we have, which are multiple maps, we have private sector mapping, we have energy, among others. We have a sort of like a data bank, which we are calling SMILE. I always never get the full form of it, but it's basically we put together all the data around the ecosystem actors, the innovation, since our focus is on innovation and learning, but also conveners that we've done, but also those that are happening within the space. And if you want to try, so let's try, and I open just in case the internet was refusing to work well. But so these are the three areas. We have the ecosystem, we have innovations, we have the convener. And if you go into the details of the ecosystem and specifically the innovation ecosystem and its partners, then you're able to have the INGOs, the startups, and the social enterprises. And then you're able to really get in there and see the organization, implementer, INGOs, and when you click, you're able to get the different actors in that space and the details that they are doing. So with all this, then we have one place, if it's innovation that we've mapped, and what we do is how do we get this data is really through calls for applications, but also engaging within the ecosystem and having conversations and being part of meetings. But we've also seen different actors reaching out to us to be mapped because they know that this database in particular, when you go, it's a one-stop center here now in Uganda where different organizations will go to get data on different actors. A case that happened recently was a donor who was looking for actors within education. And then they were able to get into the SMILE database, pick out the data, all the actors. They're able to read what they're doing, but also if it's a call for applications for solutions within education, they are able to send directed message emails to these actors, and that means there's last mile reaching of the specific actors within the ecosystem. I know we use social media and with other platform websites, but to really make sure that you reach to the last mile, to the startup, to the smaller organization that probably doesn't look at websites, having an ecosystem mapped and targeted communication happening moves a whole lot of mile. Yeah. So that's it from my end. I'll hand over back to Robert.
Thank you so much, Grace. Actually, now we will have a discussion with Yaman. Yaman,
Yeah, thank you very much, Ruba. I would take it from there. So yeah, we have allocated enough time actually for reflections, maybe questions or any thoughts related to ecosystem. But maybe before of that, I need also like to share my own perspective, especially when Ruba, you were presenting the Oper case. So for Oper case, it's quite genuine, and you could see that's the innovative approach that Oper have followed. However, I was also like always thinking and reflecting how NGOs, especially in like in the humanitarian sectors, would also like follow the same approach only for analyzing the ecosystem. Especially like you would see that Oper have created their own business line or their own business opportunity from analyzing first the ecosystem, see where's the demand, where's the need, and what would be required to somehow fit into more addressing these gaps. And from there, they have somehow presented their innovations. It's challenging, I would say so, but like at the same time, they have like I think their innovative approach was starting from analyzing the ecosystem, understanding where's the opportunities and where's the challenges, and based on this balance, they have created or developed their own approach. Similarly to that, I think while we are trying now in Syria, Uganda, Somalia, we are trying also like to be that matchmaker or enablers for innovations, building ecosystems, trying also like feed into more uh, providing or supporting the ecosystems in a way or another. But we have identified the need that's to explain and explore what ecosystem means, because like every like while doing the challenge mapping exercise, all people would somehow relate ecosystem to more into environmental issues or challenges or climate change. So I think whenever we started to have the approach in place or in mind, and it's quite clear that there's a big opportunity, especially for the humanitarian sector, that's how to analyze our ecosystems at the field of works that we are doing, responding to wash challenges, to health challenges, and etc. But at the same time, there's a lot of enablers and a lot of supporters that we could somehow might be missed, especially in Syria for the over 13 years of conflict. But at the same time, we have at least now an opportunity to work together with the government, with the private sector, with now also like the investors to drive the wheel for a better humanitarian response, but at the same time bringing more innovation into the humanitarian sector and trying also like to benefit from the analysis or the analysis of the ecosystems. So this is just a reflection from my side, but I will keep now the floor open for more reflections, feedback, or anything from your sides. So I'm looking for an icebreaker, maybe. We also like included these questions. Maybe if you could also like thought of the questions and trying to see like if you would like to answer or to reflect on some of the questions, like any when you hear the term of humanitarian innovation ecosystem or innovation in Syria, uh, who or which organizations that immediately cross to your mind or something like that. From the session, like, have you thought of a new member of the ecosystem that you never heard of before or thought of before? Abdul Hakim, please.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, Iman and colleagues. This is Abd Hakim from Shabak Organization. Many thanks for this very, very important and useful presentation. Just I have one reflection and comments. And since when we are talking about ecosystem, first of all, we need to identify or define uh, the theme that we are going to dig in deep within it. So, for example, if you remember, Yaman, we were discussing the ecosystem of related to the drought and climate change. Now, my question that not always the innovation ideas can stem from challenge, but it could sometimes be more, let's say, more developed solution to maximize the impact and minimize the resources. And this sometimes is a push by not only by the market need or the demand, but also it could be as, let's say, that new advancement for a new technology or technology push for a new solutions. So my question here is that just emphasizing that not only from challenge, but it also could be a new advanced new technology over the world that can be introduced in this new community or this context to help and give more resources and save resources. Over from myself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Abdul Hakim. I totally agree with you, and especially with while working on innovation, but it doesn't necessarily to innovate like just to innovate for the purpose of innovation. That, as you mentioned, that it could be developing a tool or working on something. But let me also hand over to Max for a reflection.
No, it's a really good question and point. I think if you're introducing something new, I mean, obviously you need to make sure that people are ready for it, that there's going to be customers and people who are ready for that change. And I think this, to me, is it's a bit of a blind spot where there's the global system on innovation focuses a lot of the resources on the supply side, right? They're investing in the solutions, but there's very little investment on the demand side because I think you're absolutely right. Like sometimes people don't even know what they're looking for. And sometimes that means you might need to engage with the demand side, with the people who will be using the solution, who will be paying for it, and so on, to make them maybe more comfortable with certain technologies so that they understand it better or less afraid of trying something. But again, to me, that reinforces the idea of working in an ecosystem. So even if you're working ahead of people, you still need to engage with that side and help build demand then for new kinds of solutions if that's not already there.
Yes, thank you very much. This is what I mean, that we sometimes we can create the demand for this new service that is solving the people or making their life more or much better. Thank you for this clarification, Yaman and Max. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you are most welcome. Maybe also like to add on Max's point, also like when we are trying to innovate in a humanitarian context, there's always this uncertainty of budgets and trying to see funders or donors that they would invest in a big pockets for innovations, given that it's uncertainty. So that's the way how we build the response innovation lab business model. So we focus on the challenges, but at the same time, challenges also creates opportunities for development of even interventions or a way that's eye opener for some challenges or gaps that we never thought of, or it could be also like innovations at the place or at the level of also creating new partnerships. We are now trying also like to see how the private sector is also could be also involved more into developing the humanitarian sectors, including tools, AI tools, digital tools, and etc. Because we see that there's a lot of procurement when it comes to humanitarian context. So if the private sector will develop their tools and their thinking and they're developing their products to serve the humanitarian sector, that would be a huge plus for the service providers, but at the same time for the beneficiaries that we are serving. So from that narrative, we are trying to build more into the challenges, but at the same time, yes, analyzing the ecosystem and see where's the opportunities and where's the gaps that we could build our interventions or build our also thinking for projects and etc. That would be a huge plus. And this is one of the reasons that we thought that we organized such a session to clarify what could ecosystem bring into the humanitarian sector, plus the innovation into the humanitarian sector.
One thing also, I like an innovation that would require an well-designed and articulated risk assessment and risk matrix, especially when we are talking about new technologies, because the risk of failure, or as Max said, that the people, they don't know that they need this demand, this service, and this will create some kind of likelihood, like let's say likelihood from medium to high, for sometimes unfortunately for failure, unless have well organized risk assessment for like this event. And I totally agree with you that one of the most important thing that stuck to my mind today, that innovation is not a tree. The innovation is not within the tree, but we should look in all the opportunities and the forest to figure out the opportunities. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe since we have time, I could also like share our ecosystem in Northwest Syria as we built it in 2024 before the recent developments in Syria, which also like give you a good at least brief on the ecosystem members, which is also being published at the website of the Response Innovation Lab. Can you see my screen? So now?
Not yet, Yemen.
Not yet.
Now we can see it.
Yes. So what we have built on also like giving also like the challenges we had in Northwest Syria before the liberations. We tried also like to map the ecosystem members from private sector to knowledge actors, innovation supporters, implementers, government back then, and finance. So it's like if you go to the implementers, we could see UN agencies, associations, local organizations, INGOs, and etc. So like if you go there, it's like also like trees of like more information, also like organization, what are the focused areas of the organization. Some also links either LinkedIn or like their personal or their organization websites, private sectors as well, social enterprises as well, and etc. We have also like noticed building an ecosystem map, it's never one task and could be done. It's always ongoing process where always there's emerging new members, either at the different levels, either finance, governments. So now, like for governance, if we are also considering the ecosystem in Syria innovation, we would have a lot of ministries, directorates, and etc. This is something to be also updated, but please, for the organizations that they are attending, if you see that there's also like if you provide some recommendations for organizations for members that they need to be considered under this map, please feel free to suggest, either reaching out to me or also like sending an email to the Innovation Lab website.
Yemen,
Yeah.
I just want to add that the map
Please.
is also available in Arabic.
Yes.
They can also check the Arabic version of the map as well.
Yes, 100%. Thank you for the reminder. Also, like within our website, we are also like we are building a marketplace as well for all the innovations that either supported by the Response Innovation Lab or being somehow verified by the RIL as a module. So we are trying to also like update our profile to be more engaging and for people to get references and etc. We share also like from time to time webinars like that more into information sessions, knowledge sessions, knowledge exchange, and etc. So also like I would encourage you also like to follow us on also LinkedIn and social media. You would see a lot of things related to innovation, and especially in the humanitarian context. Maybe last but not least, what we are also being considering as well, also to facilitate or really activates, submit challenges, organizations, and innovations as well. So soon we will be also like launching an announcement for sharing information and challenges by either organizations, social enterprises, or even individuals that they see themselves as innovators. And we see that's how we would do this matchmaking opportunities, especially with after the developments in Syria. And we see a lot of opportunities now for development, for innovations. And this is something that we really rely on in the future of like Syria response innovation. With that, I would ask you, should you have any other reflections from the other participants? I know that's a lot of